Baby Don't Shoot, a Mario Gangiona romance novella. Written by Sally Strait, narrated by Gray Trainer. Copyright 2025. To support this podcast, give it 5 stars and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Listener discretion is advised. Chapter 3. Ted came in perfect time. "Mario, you taking a shit?" The arriving stranger called, flattening Ted's proclamation. Mario stood, frozen, dripping from the shower, and raised one thick eyebrow. He turned, making sucking wet sounds with his sandals, and took stock of the surrounding walls of pocked concrete and the row of empty bathroom stalls that stood waiting like pathetic used cars in a lot. The thought came to Mario to peer underneath the stalls, having heard something. A yelp? But what did it matter? Some poor guy struggling on the john? Mario was a man who regularly tempted fate with foods doused in high Scoville salsas and sauces. Who was he to question a man in peril, at war, one he waged regularly? As Mario's friend Blake approached him, he shot his tongue through nearly closed teeth and held up 2 finger guns, slender barrels and bulbous hammers. Mario's grandfather used to say the angels stepped on his thumbs, making the balloony shape of the tips when they were stomping a baby Mario out of heaven. A son and the only child of Giovanna Gangiona, Mario was dubbed an angel, a sweet boy spat out of a cloud and born at St. Cyre's with a full mop of brown curls and a gentle smile that said, "I love you. Do you love me?" "Think fast," Blake boomed, cloaking Mario in his own towel, vision darkened except for 2 beams of light where moths had found their dinner. Mario took this as an opportunity to dry his hair. "So what's up?" Mario asked. "Man, it smells like a big old ass in here." Blake began his usual roaming and finger snapping, a young man who was more ADHD than he was human. He was failing out of college because he couldn't sit still long enough to take a test or hear a lecture about what was on it. Mario asked Blake regularly what he planned to do for a job, a grown-up one after college that paid more than being a community pool lifeguard. "I don't know. People are always doing long walks for charity and shit. How about that? Take a little off the top, then give the rest to, like, Chinese kids with cancer?" Blake teetered over to peer outside at the beach. "Man!" His snapping quickened, then he slapped the top of a closed fist. "Kim's got an ass on her." "It's all ass with you today, huh, Blakey boy?" Mario worked the towel under his armpits, mashing the wet curls there. His fingers slipped through another towel hole, and he looked down, somewhat embarrassed, even though Blake was his closest buddy and knew Mario was funneling any and all available money toward his mom's treatment. Still, earlier he lost his new green hat in the ocean, so Mario would have to choose a new hat or a fresh towel or start saving up for his mother Giovanna's, Gia for short, med refill for next month. But he knew which one he'd choose. Mario began drying off his swimsuit, angling his body. He lifted his heel, feeling a stretch in his upper thigh. A soft moan sounded, and then a wave crashed. Again, Mario stopped with a raised eyebrow. "Hey, Blake, did you say something?" Straightening, no longer captivated by an ass or a bird or the floating flecks on his eyeballs, Blake turned around. "What? Huh?" "Nothing," Mario said, and slipped free first his left, then his right foot to dry. Mario continued. "What's going on now? I can only hang out for a bit, and then I gotta check on Mom." "What are you doing after?" Blake asked. Mario replied, "Work." Mario dried enough for the ride home, threw the towel over his shoulder, bunched enough that none of the holes were visible. Mario continued. "Then I got homework. Then if I'm not exhausted, I'll start caravanning drunk strangers around." Blake's pacing slowed, but only a little, and that look crept up on his face, a pain, lost expression, like someone handed him a sparkly baton and a live flopping fish and said, "You know what to do." When it came to comfort and sympathy, especially over Mario's situation with his mom, Blake did not know what to do, except make that exact face of discomfort and say, "Sorry, your situation's so fucked up." Mario replied how he always did, "Yep." "So does that mean you're not coming to Kim's?" Blake's pacing quickened back to steady, but his gaze was on the outside, a rectangle of light calling his name in the form of some 20-year-old's firm, bouncing rear end. "Probably not," Mario said, walking over to his friend, slapping his hands onto Blake's shoulders and guiding the ass man out to find a home in the crack of two smooth mounds, stamped with a white triangle in the middle, where the sun couldn't quite kiss. Chapter 4. Ted lingered in the empty bathroom for about 10 minutes, wondering how he was going to cover up the huge wet patch of jizz spreading out across the front of his pants like a size-accurate depiction of North America. A staggering stain, the kind that rendered any garment unsalvageable, with maybe some hope after a handful of runs in the wash. Only Ted had to wear some sort of lower half clothing to get home. It's true that walking home bottomless was worse, illegal, than a visibly semen-soaked garment, but just by a little. Scooping water from the sink, a timed faucet that dribbled its product, proved to be rather useless in the fight against his saturated front. The khaki darkened to a tree bark brown, though it still glistened. Ted looked over to the bathroom shower and thought about drenching his pants completely until he saw his chair and recognized solution. It would be infantilizing, carrying the chair across his front, looking like an idiot who doesn't know how to properly lug something. But the chair did provide a layer of cover, and, head both pounding toward a place of true hangover, but also relaxed, thanks to the salve-like mental snapshots, fluid amber images of Mario's Earth-given grace, Ted had to get home, guzzle some ibuprofen, and have Shayla blow off the last meeting of the day so he could spend the night and the rest of his life jacking off. The collapsible chair across his front slapped into his belly and did little to hide the wet stain, but at least no primal smells rose to his nose or hopefully anyone else's as he walked to the rideshare pickup spot. Passing college hard bodies and families who had picked their children up from school early to teach them the importance of when it was time to say when. Ted's heart began to beat fast and loud, a hungry, strong rhythm. Ted straightened his spine, suddenly feeling alert and lucky. He had stumbled upon a god bathing, a divine being enjoying solitude and the ritual of maintenance. What a painterly portrait. These other young men strutting by, beach bums, frankly, didn't hold a candle to Mario. Hearing the name in his head, Ted expelled a sigh. Every remembered detail of the young man, every single thought of him, of Mario, required a payment of release, be it an orgasm, a sigh, the very act of thinking, mental exertion, of which each human is allotted so much in their lifetime, albeit a meager cost to worship at the altar of Mario. A classic name, perfect for a person who would be considered beautiful no matter the time or place, be it a desert in ancient times, or the fraught future on a planet with resources still ripe for the taking. Ted inhaled, closing his eyes while keeping pace. If he bumped into another person or walked straight into a pole, then that would be another payment for his saturated slice of the young boy's pie, a feast for the senses. Hey, watch it! Peeling himself away from the young man showering and lingering motions behind his eyes, Ted brought the hot, cruel world back to his vision, to see he was stepping on a kite. He got this in France. With the kite, there was a small boy and a taller, older man with a crew cut, whom Ted assumed was the father by the tight grip on the tinier pair of shoulders. Ordinarily in this circumstance, though it wasn't every day Ted got wasted on a work day, to then head to the beach, where he spied with hunger before possibly breaking a little boy's toy, Ted would apologize and apologize, offering money and another onslaught of sorries before scurrying away, running if he'd worn his orthotics. But after a helping of Mario's honey, Ted was drunk again, despite the splitting headache that could sober up someone on their 21st birthday, and he kneeled to the young kid, forgetting to take his shoe off the kite or register the father's hulking arms, and extolling a sour breath of wine with purple teeth to match. Ted offered the kid a "Je suis désolé," then boldly ruffled his small bowl cut of stringy strawberry blonde. Ah! The kid reared back, pulling his now freed pastel French kite closer to his chest. "You better hope you didn't break it, asshole," the father called out. And still Ted did not run or pacify the situation. He instead chose love. "Let it fly, son," Ted said, turning around to face the older and younger version of the same sneer. "Go fly that kite." "Hey, fuck you!" Would it always be like this, Ted wondered, unable to stop smiling? Could the memory of a young man glistening take the sting out of everything? He'd just been cussed out, was wearing a chair strapped to himself like it was part of a suicide mission, with pants that were more cum than they were a cotton blend. But, quieting, his mind wandered back to Mario. And again, Ted felt a tickle in his arm, like the young man was resting his wild curls there. Ted sauntered up one of the last little hills that took him away from the parking lot and over to the pickup drop-off area. Though gasping, sweat further soaking his underwear, Ted was lost in what Mario's neck would feel like with the touch of his tongue. He clutched the chair to his body, now trying to conceal the rising tent in his pants. Not for over 10 years had Ted been able to get another erection so soon after climaxing, but pure desire knows no anatomical limit. With his free hand, he fished in his pants for his phone. It suddenly occurred to him how weird it was that Shayla hadn't called him with an update about his schedule or the goings-on of her beloved daughter, who Ted cared about but also didn't need briefings on each specific college course she was taking. What did he care about the prerequisites of a small animal veterinarian? Moist from the humidity and its owner's earlier explosion, the phone provided an immediate answer, which was that despite any finger mashing into the on button, the device was dead. Staring down the hilly street, Ted understood his options. Walk 3 miles with a chair strapped to him, one he'd discard in the parking lot if it weren't for the stain or the chair's $30 price tag. Ted could bounce from far-off convenience store to convenience store, hoping some poor cashier would have a phone charger to spare. Neither scenario was ideal. But after a shine to the eye, a shiny schmear ping-ponging across his face, kissing the sides of his short Caesar haircut, Ted spotted a bus stop sign loosened at the bolts, rattling. Waiting for the bus, daydreaming on the bus, meant time to think only about Mario, a resplendent solution to being stranded with a dead phone. Immediately, Ted pictured the thick layer of hair on the young man's legs, swaying calmly under a current of water. Mario was a bandage for everyday woes. Out of the parking lot, Ted crested the final little hill, venturing onto the sidewalk that ran parallel to a residential road, with red curbs and beach grass popping out of cement and blacktop, softening what man had made so cold. Ted's breathing began to slow while he stared at the narrow beach homes pressed into one another, content. The second luckiest part about taking the bus was how painfully aware Ted was of the stop right outside his house. The constant high-pitched whine of the bus's brakes regularly destroyed his work concentration, unless he wore bulky, noise-canceling headphones that crushed his tiny ears. Finally, the reason arrived for why he was forced to hear those squeaking, bleeding brakes every 20 minutes. They'd suddenly become the thing to save him, to take him home. Run down, paint-chipped, the bus vestibule was made of black metal and provided 6 feet of shelter. Ted would feel better to be out of the sun that seemed to get stronger as the day wore on. It was never clear if its rays were most intense at noon or at its arrival and departure. But either way, the heat and the hangover headache were really starting to make it harder to concentrate on Mario, like holding a balloon during a light monsoon. During his walk over, Ted hoped that some granny wasn't hogging the vestibule with a litter of tote bags, so he too could enjoy the shade. And then he experienced a raging monsoon of his own, in his mind, in his heart, and down in his damp loins, all on a very sunny day. There, at the bus stop, was Mario, veiny hands clasped in his lap, legs stretched straight out in front of him, crossed at the bare ankles, hairless from there on except for a line down the tops of his feet. Ted stopped abruptly, then went to turn away before thinking against it, creating whiplash. And the chair smacked him hard in the chest with a loud metallic clatter. There was no granny there to soften the blow of Mario turning his attention from the street and gazing right at Ted. Mario's expression was at first curious, soft and pensive, and then his eyes fell to Ted's chest, eliciting a bigger response. Full smile, teeth like a first snow, and face dimples deep and echoing across both sides of his face. A spotlight beamed right at Ted. And if he had been even a drop more dehydrated, he would have fallen over. And then the beautiful boy spoke. "Hey, you found your chair." Chapter 5. The older man with the chair stood there, frozen, hand aloft, a statue of a politician mid-speech. But to Mario, it didn't seem like a reply was coming, especially given the man's lack of eye contact. This pose, all because Mario addressed him about his recovered chair, seemed to the young man quite silly. Mario slid his legs back from their outstretched position, and, as if by magic, the man lowered his hand and his gaze, finally meeting Mario's eyes. Yeah, said the guy with the chair. Don't want to lose something like that, Mario said. He shot out a finger gun, sideways, kill shot. I could tell it was yours by the tear. He scooted himself toward the other side of the bench, inches from the man. It's right at the top, Mario said. Quickly, possibly irked, the man looked down at his chair, resting on his pec, and there was indeed a noticeable tear in the bag, with one of the metal legs peeking out. Oh, yeah. For whatever reason, Mario was making this guy nervous. From being frozen 1 minute, the guy was now shifting his weight from leg to leg and running a hand through his cropped hair, like it was blocking his face. It wasn't. Mario thought about telling him where the bathroom was in case he had to go, but this man absolutely knew the bathroom was just down the hill. What was his deal? You can sit, Mario said. Mario slid back to the other end of the bus bench, its cool metal sending a chill into his upper thighs. The man froze again, his eyes on anything but the person addressing him. Giving the guy nothing but kindness, Mario was slightly confused about the man's standoffishness, but he was also confused about why he was trying so hard with a stranger who wasn't having it, until Mario remembered the 2 light beers he pounded with Blake and company before they parted ways. And suddenly, Mario's dogged chumminess made sense. Deciding to ease up and leave the stranger alone, Mario turned his attention back to the road and followed the cars and passers-by with his gaze. He had been trying to stay as present as possible during his downtimes, periods away from his mother and school and work, all in an effort to get better at relaxing. Breathe in, breathe out, stay present, and watch the world be. He had skipped his last seminar for the day, American Auto and World War II. The professor, as wrinkled as a desert prune, graded every test on a curve, since it was a joke history class, and a buddy of Mario's who had taken it last semester had access to every test. It was the easy way out, but what did it matter? Mario wasn't trying to get into UCLA to study history. He wanted to be a pharmacist, and the science and math classes he paid attention in, excelling on his own terms. The intermittent whoosh of cars, unleashing their breeze across his face like some sort of exhaust-laden caress, helped relax Mario, and he laced his fingers behind his head, leaning back against the vestibule. Did you have fun? Mario asked. The man still didn't sit or look at Mario, but he responded a lot quicker this time. Mario wondered if he might have some differences. Yeah, I had a nice time. The man rubbed his temples, and Mario watched the skin ripple under his touch. It was smooth skin for a man this guy's age, very few lines or bumps, doing some light sex work to pay the bills. Mario was used to older guys with veins visible like a map of the New York City subway system, and more bumps than smooth patches of skin. Not this guy. He had most of his hair, too. Mario found him cute, wouldn't have turned him away if the man had propositioned him on rentaboy.com. What was nice about it? Mario asked. Mario closed his eyes, trying not to force his breathing, but instead allowing it to happen on its own. The broad expanse of his chest rose, making his mint tank top bulge. Then it deflated back into the compact shield that it was. Needing help with stay-in-bed anxiety, anytime he wasn't working or at school or helping his mom, Mario turned to the mental health staff at Laser Beach Community College, and the counselor there, Laura, wearing cotton candy pink lipstick, nodded along to Mario's literal sob story, then instructed him on the helpfulness of mindfulness, of breathing. It wasn't that helpful, but because of the offered techniques, Mario spent less time under the covers in full panic and kept up the practice of relaxation. He was no quitter. The man finally answered. The view, that was the best part. Mario could feel the man's nervousness, and he couldn't help himself but be cheeky. He patted the metal bench at his side, which clattered louder than expected under the heavy meat of his hand. Bus won't be here for another. Mario cracked an eyelid and checked his black watch. 3 minutes. Oh, well, I guess I will, sit, the man replied. With the man about to do it, Mario had to stop himself from sticking out a hand, thumb raised and goosing the guy. He wasn't sure if it was the booze or the fact that his life was in the dumpster, which was also on fire and being urinated on by cruel spectators, that he was so punch-drunk. But it was a nice break from crying alone or crying with his mother or waiting around in the same shitty hospital, drinking the surprisingly good free coffee. "What brand is this?" he had asked a nurse, who then replied with an apologetic grimace. "It's Folgers." It worked for him. The man sat as the wind carried over a very earthy smell to Mario's nose. It smelled like unwashed motel sheets. It was strong enough to make Mario open his eyes, something the man clearly wasn't expecting, because he was staring right at Mario. Caught, the man looked down, which Mario thought was charming in an awkward way. The young man decided he should have goosed the guy, because if Mario had any doubts that this man was into him, they were dissolved with that half-stolen look. "What's your name?" Mario asked, unsheathing a hand from behind him. "Ted," the man said, and took Mario's hand to shake. The hand was as sweaty as Mario thought it would be. Mario was a hand sweater himself, leaving puddles on so many arms of hospital chairs. But what did surprise him was Ted's grip. Strong, classic. It gave Mario a jolt across his lap. "Mario," the young man returned, his voice softer, less charismatic, more vulnerable. Mario was lucky enough that he was nearly everyone's type. He'd grown from a scrawny nerd in junior high to a muscled high school senior, thanks to his ability to play football well and what he could gain from doing it. A sculpted body that drew people like flies to fresh-flung shit. "What a horrible expression, my love," his mom would say. But it was true. Mario had his pick of the litter, and certainly had to deal with a full inbox when he first put up a profile on the Rent-A-Boy website. There were a lot of men like Ted desiring a sex worker like him, whether it was simply Mario's beauty or the experience of scratching a youthful indiscretion that society, or they themselves, stopped them from having. He didn't know, but the one benefit, besides the money, was that Mario had a thing for older men. Mario didn't know if he found a worn body more beautiful, or he too was trying to scratch an itch he never got to have. His dad, a welder, literally ran out of town when he found out that Gia was pregnant. But the impetus of one's desires, or his own, never interested Mario. He was, after all, going to be a pharmacist, not a therapist who doled out tissues and breathing techniques, wondering why people liked what it is that they liked. The most important thing was that the bus was droning up the street, right toward him and nervous Ted, and Mario was going to see how far he could go, utilizing this downtime, riding the drunkenness and his precious freedom like he did when out skateboarding, both feet planted, letting sheer nerve steer the ship. "Guess that's us," Mario said, nudging into Ted's thick arm with his golden brown elbow. That was Baby Don't Shoot, a Mario Gangiona romance novella, written by Sally Strait and performed by Gray Trainer. Did you enjoy yourself? Good. Then join us next Wednesday for the next installment. Consider supporting the author at buymeacoffee.com/Sally Strait. That's buymeacoffee.com/Sally Strait. SALLYSTRAIT. Baby Don't Shoot is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or actual events is purely coincidental. No generative artificial intelligence was used in the writing of this work.